Love is the language of heaven. It is the heartbeat of eternity, the one thing that will never fade away. And when you stand before God, he will not ask how many people knew your name, how many achievements you collected, or how far you traveled. No, he will ask if you learned to love. Truly love, not in word alone, but in action, in sacrifice, in the quiet moments when no one was watching. Because love, real love, is not simply an emotion. It is the greatest evidence of God at work in a soul. It is the defining mark of those who belong to him. The world has its own ideas about love. Love that changes with convenience. Love that is given only when it is deserved. Love that is easy when it costs nothing. But the love that God asks about, the love he requires, is the kind that mirrors his own, the kind that gives when there is no return, the kind that stays when walking away would be easier, the kind that forgives the wounds that should be unforgettable. You see, life is a test of love. Every day you are given opportunities to love in a way that reflects heaven. When a stranger needs kindness, when a friend betrays you, when someone you trusted breaks your heart, when you are exhausted, when you are overlooked, when you are unappreciated, these are the moments when heaven is watching. And one day God will ask, did you love the way I loved you? The answer will not be found in your words, but in your life. It will be found in the way you treated the ones who could do nothing for you, in the patience you showed to the ones who frustrated you, in the mercy you extended to those who never even said, I'm sorry. It will be found in the nights you chose to pray for your enemies instead of cursing them, in the times you gave even when you were the one in need. Some of you carry wounds from people who should have loved you but didn't, and you think, how can I love when I've been broken? But friend, love is not found in the easy places. It is found in the very wounds that were meant to destroy you. Because when you surrender those wounds to God, he fills them with something greater. He turns your pain into a testimony. He turns your suffering into compassion. He turns your broken heart into a vessel that can love others who are just as broken. And when you stand before him on that final day, he will not measure your life by your successes or your status. He will not ask about the size of your bank account, the titles before your name, or the praise of men. He will look into the depths of your soul and ask, did you love? Did you love when it was hard? Did you love when you had every reason not to? Did you love in a way that pointed the world back to me? Because in the end, nothing else will matter. Not the applause, not the possessions, not the temporary things we chase. All that will remain is love. The love you gave, the love you lived, the love that shaped eternity. Truth is not just something we believe, it is something we live. And one day, when you stand before God, he will not ask how well you blended into the world, how many people agreed with you, or how comfortable your life was. He will ask, did you walk in truth? Did you stand for what was right when no one else would? Did you choose truth even when it cost you? Because truth has always come at a price. It is not popular. It does not bend to fit culture or convenience. It does not change with the times. The world will tell you that truth is whatever you decide it is, that you can shape it to fit your desires, that it is flexible, that it moves with the winds of opinion. But God's truth has never moved. It is as unshakable as the one who spoke it into existence. It is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And yet, how often do we trade the truth for something easier? How often do we stay silent when we should speak? How often do we compromise a little here, a little there, telling ourselves it doesn't really matter? But every choice matters. Every decision shapes the kind of life we build. Think about the times you've had to choose between truth and approval, when speaking out would have meant losing friends, when standing firm would have meant being mocked, when holding on to your convictions would have meant walking a lonely road. The world rewards those who conform. It welcomes those who keep quiet. It celebrates those who go along with whatever is easiest. But one day you will stand before the God of truth and he will ask, Did you follow my voice or did you follow the crowd? Did you build your life on the shifting sand of opinion or did you anchor yourself to the rock of my word? Did you let fear silence you or did you walk in truth even when it cost you? And the thing about truth is, if you do not stand for it in the small moments, you will not stand for it when it truly matters. If you do not choose truth when the price is small, you will not choose it when the cost is great. Some of you have been struggling. You feel the pressure to compromise, to go along with what is easy. And I understand. But I want to tell you something today. Choosing truth will never be the wrong decision. It may cost you in this life. It may bring rejection. It may bring suffering. It may bring seasons of loneliness. But the truth will never fail you. The truth will never abandon you. And when you stand before God, you will not regret one moment that you chose to walk in it, because truth is not just something you know, it is something you become. It shapes you, it refines you, it transforms you into someone who reflects the light of Christ in a world filled with darkness. And on that final day, when all else has faded away, only one thing will matter. Not whether you pleased the world, not whether you were accepted by men, but whether you walked in truth. One day when you stand before God, He will not ask how much you gained, but how much you gave. He will not ask what you accomplished for yourself, but what you poured out for His kingdom. Because every gift, every talent, every opportunity you were given was not meant to build your own glory. It was meant to serve a greater purpose. So many people spend their lives chasing success, chasing recognition, chasing a name that the world will remember. But in the end, the world forgets, the applause fades, the titles are left behind, and what remains? The only thing that will matter on that day is how you used what God entrusted to you. Some of you were given the gift of words. Did you use them to build up, to encourage, to point others to truth? Some of you were given the gift of music. Did you use it to glorify yourself or to bring people into the presence of God? Some of you were given wealth. Did you hoard it or did you bless others with it? Some of you were given wisdom, leadership, creativity, strength. None of it was random. None of it was for you alone. It was given for a reason. It was given for eternity. And one day God will ask, what did you do with what I gave you? Did you bury it in fear, afraid of failure, afraid of what others might think? Did you waste it chasing after the temporary, running after things that never truly satisfy? Or did you offer it back to the one who gave it to you? There's a parable Jesus told about a master who gave his servants talents. One received 5, one received 2, and one received just 1. The first 2 invested what they were given. They put it to use. They didn't waste it. They didn't hide it. They multiplied it. And when the master returned, he said to them, well done, good and faithful servant. But the last man, the one who received only 1, he buried it in the ground. He did nothing with it. And when the master returned, he had nothing to show for it. I wonder how many people will stand before God one day and realize they buried their calling, buried their purpose, buried the very gifts He placed in them. They let fear hold them back. They let the opinions of others silence them. They let comfort steal what could have been used for something eternal. But friend, what God has given you is not small. It is not insignificant. It is not meant to be hidden, whatever it is. Whether you think it is great or small, God intends for it to be used. And you may say, but I don't have much. I don't have great talents. I don't have a platform. I don't have wealth. But it is never about how much you have. It is about what you do with what you have. The little boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish didn't have much, but he placed it in the hands of Jesus, and it fed thousands. The widow with only a handful of flour didn't have much, but she gave what she had, and God sustained her. The shepherd boy with just a sling and a few stones didn't have much, but in the hands of God, he brought down a giant. What you have may seem small, but when placed in the hands of God, it becomes something greater than you could ever imagine. And one day when you stand before him, he won't ask how much you had. He will ask what you did with it. And in that moment, the only thing that will matter is whether you used your gifts for his glory or buried them in the ground. One day when you stand before God, he will not ask if you were never wronged. He will ask if you forgave. Not once, not twice, but as he forgave you. Because forgiveness is not just something you give to others. It is something that frees your own soul. There are people sitting here today carrying wounds from years ago. Wounds that have shaped you, hardened you, maybe even defined you. Someone betrayed you. Someone you trusted turned their back on you. Someone spoke words that cut deep, words you still hear echoing in your mind. And the truth is, you have every reason to be angry. You have every reason to hold on to what they did. But listen to me. Holding on to unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. It does not harm them, it only destroys you. It builds a prison around your heart, locking you in bitterness while they go on living their lives. And yet, when we talk about forgiveness, so many say, but you don't know what they did to me. No, I don't, but God does. And he is not asking you to pretend it never happened. He is not asking you to say it was okay. He is asking you to release it to him, because as long as you hold on to it, it still controls you. Jesus told a story about a servant who owed a king an enormous debt, more than he could ever repay. And yet the king, in his mercy, forgave it all. The man walked away free. But do you know what he did next? He found another man who owed him a small amount, grabbed him by the throat and demanded payment. And when the man couldn't pay, he had him thrown into prison. When the king heard about it, he was outraged. He said, I forgave you everything, and yet you could not forgive this small debt. And he had the man cast into prison until he could pay it all. That is how God sees us when we refuse to forgive. We have been forgiven a debt we could never repay. Every sin, every failure, every time we turned our back on him, he wiped it clean. And yet we hold on to the offenses of others as if they are greater than our own. You may say, but they never apologized. Forgiveness is not about them, it is about you and God. It is about saying, Lord, I release this, I trust you with my pain, I refuse to carry this burden any longer. Forgiveness does not mean you must allow someone back into your life. It does not mean you excuse what they did. It means you refuse to let their actions steal your peace any longer. There was a man who sat in a prison cell for years, falsely accused. The people he thought would stand by him turned against him. He had every reason to be bitter, but do you know what he said? I refuse to let what they did make me into someone I was never meant to be. That man walked out of prison with his heart free. Some of you today may not be in a physical prison, but you are bound by unforgiveness. You have carried it long enough. It has weighed you down long enough. One day when you stand before God, he will not ask what they did to you. He will ask if you forgave. Because in the end, forgiveness is not about setting them free. It is about setting yourself free. One day when you stand before God, he will not ask if your journey was easy. He will ask if you remain faithful. Faith is not proven in the sunshine. It is proven in the storm. It is not tested in seasons of comfort, but in seasons of silence, in the wilderness, in the midnight hours, when you wonder if God is still listening. Some of you have been walking through dark valleys. You have prayed prayers that seem to go unanswered. You have knocked on doors that never opened. You have trusted, but the breakthrough hasn't come. And you've wondered, did God forget me? But listen to me. Faith is not about seeing. Faith is about holding on when you cannot see. Faith is about believing when everything in you wants to give up. And when you stand before God, he will not ask if you had all the answers. He will ask if you trusted him even when you hadn't. Look at the great men and women of faith in Scripture. Not one of them had an easy path. Abraham was promised a son, but he waited 25 years before he saw that promise fulfilled. Joseph had a dream of greatness, but before he reached it, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and locked in a prison. Job lost everything, his family, his wealth, his health, and yet in his suffering he declared, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. And then there was Jesus, hanging on a cross, abandoned, mocked, suffering. And in his final moments he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Even the Son of God experienced the silence of heaven, but he did not give up. He endured, and because he endured, salvation was made possible for all. You see, there will be times in your life when it feels like God is silent, times when the storm rages and the answers do not come. But God is never absent. He is never unaware. And what he is asking of you in those moments is this: will you trust me anyway? Will you trust me when the healing doesn't come as you expected? Will you trust me when the door remains closed? Will you trust me when life looks nothing like what you had planned? Some of you are standing in that place right now. You have questioned, you have wrestled, you have wondered if God still sees you. And I want you to hear this: he does. He has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. And if you do not let go, if you keep walking, even when you don't understand, one day you will see that every trial had a purpose. Every tear was counted. Every moment of waiting was shaping something in you far greater than you could imagine. Because faith is not about God doing what we want. It is about trusting him no matter what. It is about believing that he is good, even when life is not. It is about standing firm even when the winds of doubt try to shake you. And one day, when you stand before him, he will not ask if you had all the answers. He will ask if you held on, if you kept the faith, if you believed even when you could not see. And in that moment, when you finally see the full picture, when you realize that every unanswered prayer, every trial, every tear was part of something greater, oh, how you will rejoice that you did not give up. One day when you stand before God, he will not ask how long you lived, but whom you lived for. Because life is not measured in years. It is measured in impact. It is measured in love. It is measured in the eternal difference you made in the lives of others. The world will tell you to live for yourself, chase success, build a name, gather wealth. But in the end, none of those things will follow you beyond this life. The only thing that will remain is what you did for the kingdom of God. The only thing that will stand is how you loved. Some people spend their whole lives climbing a ladder only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. They chase after temporary things, believing that if they can just reach the next level, get the next promotion, buy the next thing, then they will be satisfied. But satisfaction never comes, because the human heart was not made to be filled by the things of this world. Jesus told us plainly, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his soul? Think about that for a moment. You can have everything the world calls success and yet in the eyes of heaven have nothing at all. Because in the end, God will not ask about your bank account. He will not ask how many followers you had. He will not ask how much people admired you. He will ask, did you love me? Did you love others? Because love is the greatest commandment. Love is what fulfills the law. Love is what Jesus demonstrated when he stretched out his hands on that cross and gave everything for you. And he did not just call you to receive his love, he called you to give it, to be his hands and feet in a world that is desperate for something real. Some of you have been waiting to make an impact, waiting for the right time, waiting for a bigger platform, waiting for a sign. But you don't need a stage to change the world. You just need to be faithful with the opportunities God has already given you. Maybe there's someone in your life right now who needs a word of encouragement. Maybe there's someone who needs forgiveness, someone who needs kindness, someone who needs to see Jesus through you. Because love is not a feeling, it is a choice. A decision to live for more than yourself, a decision to serve, to give, to pour out even when no one notices. And one day when you stand before the King of Kings, He will not measure your life by what you accumulate. He will measure it by what you gave. He will not ask if you impressed the world. He will ask if you loved like he did. Because in the end, the only thing that will matter, the only thing that will remain is love.